So we're back with hour 2 in our second AngularJS lesson. We've got our little task, seems to be adding. But now we also want, when these are added, we want to be creating a list that will display all of the tasks. Right? Obviously, anytime we reload the page, that task list is going to get wiped out. It only persists so long as the page is loaded. We're not persisting this to a database. So let's go back to our so after we've got our form, I'll put on another little heading, maybe put on an H2. There's current to-dos. Actually, I suppose maybe it would make more sense. You know what, I'll put this in a section tag. So we'll have a section for adding and a section below that lists the current to-dos. So in here, we'll use an unordered list. And we can use Bootstrap as a list group class. So what we want is a list item for every to-do in the list. So we'll want an li class of list group item. Yeah, I just changed those to sections. And in our list group item, what we want is to print out the name of the task. So what value represents the name of the task? We already have it on here. Yeah, our task input. So if we, in our little handlebars or mustaches, output task input, this isn't completely right because we'll have multiple values, right? Task input won't represent just a single value. So what we need is we need some kind of loop, right? If we have 5 tasks, we want 5 li tags, each one with the different task input name. So we're going to use a new Angular tag, Angular attribute. We've added, today we've used ngClick. What do you want to think about? Good guess, not ngloop, but you're on the right track. No, starts with an R. You got it. We want ngrepeat. So now we need to connect up that repeat to some kind of list in Angular. So we want ngrepeat. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to repeat. Kind of similar to how we did it in PHP. In PHP, we used a for each loop, right? We'd say for each to-dos as to-do. Here we're going to kind of do it as reverse. To-do in to-dos. So to-dos is our array. That's our list. And we're going to call each individual one as we loop through a single to-do. So there's our group, and there's one item. So we just need to put a prefix on here. What prefix will we need in front of task input that represents the current item in the list? You got it. So this is how we can display. Go to our to-dos array, repeat, call each one a to-do, and then display our task input value. Now here's the neat thing. We don't need to write any kind of list or get function. This should actually, if we refresh the page, this should actually populate our list automatically as soon as we add a task. Why? How will it do that?
I don't know, but isn't the to-do when you add it?
Well, let's look at what happens. Remember, Angular is two-way binding, right? So we put a value into task input, and then we call the add function. So look at what happens. We take that task input, we add it to our array called to-dos. So let's try this. Okay, so we're not there yet, but we have, there was one thing I forgot to do with it. Bear with me for a second. Think about what's going on. We're adding to the console. I think this will matter. I'm just going to change my variable name for a minute. Obviously, I'm missing something.
Should the ng or should the repeat be in the UL instead of the list item? Or would that just make a new unrolled list?
I think that would make a new list. Not sure if it has to do with where I declared my. Just going to try this for a second. I'm just going to cut those out. Actually, I'll comment those so that they're in the same section. I don't think this should matter. And I'm going to move my ng controller into that section. I don't think this should affect it, but we'll see. So they're in the same container with ng controller. No. Move my ng app. Okay, so none of those are our issues. I'm going to comment that out for a moment. Let's see. List group. We can add one more thing here. We'll say track by index. We'll need this later for doing delete. That should still. So that's not making my difference. Well, obviously our function is add functions getting called because we can see our to-do in the console.
Just out of scope to be put into the DOM.
Well, I mean, our entire HTML is tied to the module, and everything in the body is tied to the controller. I mean, here's a, I did the sample the other day, and we can look at it. This is what I was trying to recreate. So it should bind automatically. There's no, we just call add, we add the element to our array, and our array is repeated.
What did you take that?
Well, I'm just trying to see what the difference is between these two. They look the same to me. Here's my add function. If anybody can see the difference between those two, you're smarter than I am. Well, there I just used a different ng model on my form. I called my ng model title. We called ours task input.
Well, I figured it out. You have to take a student as a task input, and it works. So at the very bottom under current to do.
Oh, yeah.
You have to take it out on that.
Sorry, where was that?
So in your HTML under current to-dos in your H2, take out the to-do dot task input, just take out the to-do dot.
That still makes problems because if you change the text on anything, all of them change.
Well, it shows up right now.
Oh, I see. It's just right because it's already. Good catch. Thank you. Right. Thank you.
Problem is that if you change that, it changes all of them.
Right. Well, another thing we need to do is we should clear out the box after we add. So the text box, after we add, we want to clear that out. So let's, after we add, so we'll push, we'll add the new to-do to the list. And then clear text box. So how would we clear the text box?
Just go task input equal blank.
You got it. So we'll take our task input, which is bound with ng model to our text box. So add the element to the list, but then clear the current element out. Let's see what happens now.
It's still looking for the value of the text box for it.
And you should just use to do
Right.
in the HTML.
That's right. It's the wrong value. It should just be to do. Thank you. That was fix. Because there is only one column in our array. It's not multi-dimensional. There are no properties. Now our box clears. There, that's what we wanted.
How would you address like inputs that are the same? Like if you add task 3 again, it'll throw you an error.
No, it's just telling me it's doubled.
It's still throwing me a bunch of errors too.
So we need this, ngrepeat. So this represents the current item in the array. So that's what we want to display, is the current item in the array. So take the text box value, add it to the list. Our list is automatically bound here, and then clear the text box value out. Rachel? We don't actually need that yet, but we're going to need it for delete. It will keep track of what position in the array. So if we click on the fourth element, it will know that's position 3 in the array. And then we can get rid of it, right? So this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to want to put delete buttons inside of our delete IDs or anything. All we know is what position in the list. So the index will keep track. We can use that index to then remove one of these. So if I take that out, it'll still work right now. I'll just cut that out. It should still work fine, but we're going to need it. We're going to add delete in a minute. So 1, 2. You can see the two-way binding. Clicking add changes the list, and Angular automatically keeps this list up to date at all times. We don't have to first do an add and then do a requery. Angular does it automatically. So the last thing I want to do is do that delete. So I'm going to keep that back in here, this track by index. I'm going to put this into a span tag so I can make them all the same width, and then we can put a delete button beside it. I'll put a span tag here. This way, all of our to-do items will be the same width, and our delete buttons will line up. Then we'll put on another button. We'll give it a class of BTN danger. So the button's red. So now we should get delete buttons appearing to the right of all of our task names. And they should be aligned because we used Bootstrap. Okay, so they're not aligned so well. Don't worry too much about it. So we're going to need to add something in our JS file. In order to make delete work, we need to add something to the JavaScript file, and then we'll need to add something to our HTML to connect the button up. So we're going to need to go back.
HTML would be the same as our add ngclick add except ngclick remove or whatever we call the function.
Yep. So let's go here. So we're going to need to create a function called delete. To our controller, we already have an add function. We're building a delete function. So this is a little bit like the controllers we've built with Node and Express, right? We wrote a create, we wrote a remove, a delete in there, but now we're just using Angular for it. We're going to go to our scope.todos, which is our array, our list of to-dos. And we want to call the splice method. Splice will remove an element from our array at a certain index. So this is where, Rachel, that index variable comes in. And we want to delete one record only at that element. So remove the element from the array, and then our list will automatically get updated. So now, coming back, Brandon, to your point, it's exactly what we need to do. Our delete button now needs an ngClick attribute, and it's going to call ngClick equals delete on those delete buttons. We don't even have to pass in a value in the function. That's what that track by index does. It automatically links each element to the number in the array. So go back to our delete button and add ngClick equals delete.
Okay.
in the class button danger if you write right, then all of the delete buttons you can do to the right.
Just like that. Okay. Thank you. I like that. We'll align all the buttons off to the right. Let's try it out. There's a text align right.
It's full right. That's right.
Full dash right. So now if I delete item number 2, which is at index 1, right? Index 0, 1, 2. It's gone and my list is automatically bound. Sorry, pull dash right.
Yeah, that puts it all the way to the parent, but it doesn't center it right.
Yeah, it doesn't look very good because it's.
All right.
Like,
Well, I won't worry about how it looks too much then. So again, it's real-time binding. So add again. It's gone without even the page refresh. There's probably something we should add to the delete. Yeah, we should add a simple confirmation. So normally if this was, an HTML page, we'd have to create a JavaScript file and write that JavaScript in there or attach a class to it with using jQuery. Well, we already have a JS file that we can do that with. So we can actually wrap our JavaScript confirmation right in here. So when delete is called, before we remove it, we can say if, move this closing curly bracket. So if window, we can still write regular DOM JavaScript in here, dot confirm. So pop up, use the DOM, use vanilla JavaScript to pop up a confirm message, and it will generate an OK cancel. If the user clicks cancel, nothing happens. If they click OK, our delete will remove that item from our array. Add a few back in. Now I get a little JavaScript. When I cancel, my array is untouched. I click OK, it's gone. So it's really easy. If there's any kind of run-of-the-mill JavaScripts we want, easy to use them. They can be integrated right into what we're doing. So this is kind of like the front end version of what we have been doing with Node and Express through the root files, through a controller. The only difference is obviously this stuff is just stored locally in memory. We're not persisting it to a MongoDB, which would be what we'll get into next week. One more little task I'd like you to do. Somewhere on your page, maybe above this list or beside current to-dos or even here, I want you to display how many to-dos there are currently in the list. So you can put a label or a span tag on. So it should work kind of like this. So starts off saying 0. And as I add, Angular dynamically is populating that value. So you'll need a span or a label. You'll need to use an ng model to bind it to an Angular value. So every time we add or delete, that number's automatically updated. I'll give you a hint. You don't have to create a new variable for this. It's a value that already exists that Angular has access to.
You didn't even need another ng.
No, I guess you don't even need an ng tag. You just need the mustache handlebars around a variable that will show you how many items there are. You're right. You don't even need, we don't even need ng model. Martin, you have yours done?
Yeah,
Okay, so where did, what HTML, where did you put it?
I just put it in the H2 where it says current to-dos, and then I just put a span with the handlebars that just said to-dos.length.
Okay, so in here you use the handlebars.
And then just to-dos.length.
So because to-dos is an array, it has a built-in, just a regular JavaScript array. All arrays in JavaScript have a length property that will tell us how many items are in that array. So that should work. We can go back. Oh, I guess we want to leave a space after it. So again, we're seeing the two-way data binding. As soon as we interact with our add or delete function and update our list, that value, that length property is automatically kept up to date in real time. What kind of applications might this be useful for? Where users are modifying data and getting things updated in real time in their browser. That we can make a change over here, we can add, edit, or delete data, and things are reflected without our page being refreshed, without us needing to use Ajax.
Invoicing software?
Okay, so give me an example. What would somebody be doing?
Okay, so if you're invoicing someone, you'd be adding a job, you'd be adding an amount, you normally have a couple of things you'd be adding to this list, so you would want to see all of them before you would actually click a button to send it and invoice the person.
Okay, great. So I'm going to invoice you. Yeah. So I'm a dental office, right? And my client came in. I have a dental office. You're building it, and the client came in for, they needed a cleaning. So that's one charge. They needed x-rays. That's another charge, right? They needed something else. That's a third charge, right? So as I add those items, it's going to total in real time for me.
It's like, it manipulates the DOM, like, where you want it. Like, it's PHP, it would just add, like, a random thing where you choose it to put in. Like, it'll just put another div in for whatever.
Yep.
Like, you can choose, like, to put it in, like, some kind of word. But, like, you choose what the DOM looks like, basically.
That's right. So you have much greater control of the DOM, right? Okay. Can anybody think of another example where what kind of application might you build where this is going to give a much better user experience?
Any bulk stuff. It's like if you have to send, it's like I've seen some web posts where they're, in order to like add all of their stuff, like all of your domain information, you would add it all to a list and then you would submit it to the software. So if you had to add like 9 MX records, you could do all of that and then push it, then load once
Yep.
instead of
Okay.
9 times.
But something like this. So why would Angular be useful on a page like this?
The page doesn't need to refresh, automatically updates how many items you see.
Right? It doesn't do a full refresh here. As soon as I change the quantity, my things update here without doing a full reload. It doesn't need Ajax. So anything where we're doing any kind of calculations, I mean, anybody ever ordered dinner online, like ordered pizza online, you can now drag items on and see your pizza being built and see it being retotaled. Well, you know, you're modifying it in real time. So they're probably using Angular for doing that two-way binding. So it's fast. It happens instantaneously. Okay, and updating one thing allows us to keep other things up to date at the same time.
How would you do it so if you refresh the page, the to-do stay there?
Okay. In this case, we couldn't because every time this script gets loaded, right, we're initializing an empty list. So this is that's where we would need the database backend, right? Rather than just adding tasks into memory, we would add them to MongoDB instead. So what we'll try to do next week, we basically, the way that this will fold into a Node application is we sort of divide, we have a public, which manages our Angular controllers and our Angular views, and then we have a server folder. And the server contains our models and all of our routes on server.
So you could like hook it up to a database?
It's exactly what we do. So that's how, so in effect, we've been using EJS for the front end, but in a full mean stack application, we don't even necessarily need EJS. We can use Angular and HTML for the views and the front end. But in here, rather than just interacting with an array in memory, we're going to want to call our server routes, which call our server models, which save and persist our stuff to MongoDB. So we're kind of doing, we did the one end first. We sort of did all the back end stuff has been the course up to now. Now we're going to do Angular on the front end, and next week we'll try and put it together. But the architecture will get a little bit complicated, but that's where we're going. So eventually, yeah, it goes to a database instead. So hopefully next week we can build something like this, but rather than just saving it to an array which gets wiped out, we'll save it to MongoDB instead. So it will persist, but we still have that rich user interface with the two-way data binding. So it's very fast on our page. That's how we can build a single page application, right? We can we've already done, the only thing we haven't done is update, but we could easily make these updatable by writing them in a text box or putting a checkbox so we could mark them as completed, for example. That's kind of where we're going with this next week. So there's a ton to learn about Angular, and Angular 2 is coming out, which is apparently going to be radically different. I didn't use Angular 2 because it's still in beta, and most of the resources out there are using Angular 1. So I'm going to show you your lab now, and then you have the rest of the class to work on to do the lab. Okay, it should be enough time. If you don't finish it, you can submit it tonight. But the idea is I'm giving you class time to work on it now so that I can help you with it. So here is your lab. So the link is on Blackboard. It's lab 6. So what I want you to do, there's a fantastic free Angular course available on Code School. Here's the link. You can sign in with a social media account. You don't have to create a Code School account. You don't have to do all 5 levels. You only have to do the first 2 levels. Okay. So in each, I'm just going to show you, I'll show you the introductory video, which is just a few minutes. And then you don't have to write the code in your code editor. You code the whole thing online, and they will give you hints and evaluate your code in each section. Okay. So there's video introduction, so you can, pretty much everybody has headphones, so you can pop your headphones in if you like. You don't have to. And then there's several challenges in each. So I'm just going to show you kind of how this goes. So all you need to do to submit.
Miners need a store to sell their gems and more. They need it really quick. Angular will do the trick. Directives set the stage in your HTML page. Controllers give your app the behavior that it lacks. Write expressions so that you can add your data in the view. And modules make connections.